Welcome to another episode of Women in Family Business. We are WIFB, the global initiative for women to share their stories and expertise on matters related to the family enterprise. In this episode, we spoke to Easa Al Gurg, Vice Chair and Director of Retail for the Easa Saleh Al Gurg Group in the UAE. Easa has been instrumental in shaping innovation and governance in her family's firm. In our conversation, she emphasizes the importance of establishing a solid governance foundation to support the critical decision-making process of current and future family business leaders. The Easa Saleh Al Gurg Group is one of the UAE's leading diversified conglomerates with a portfolio of over 30 companies. And Easa talks to us about the innovative mindset she believes has always been essential for her family's success. Enjoy this episode with Easa. Welcome to another episode of Women in Family Business. Easa Al Gurg from the UAE is joining us today, and I'm so happy to have you with us, Easa. Welcome.
Thank you, Ramya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Easa, I'm so excited to talk to you about so many different topics. Mainly, we are going to be talking about leadership and innovation. We're going to be focusing on that. But because it's family business, it is always personal. Like, we like to think that it's all professional in the end, especially when the company has reached the considerable size that yours has. So the Easa Group is, I think now you're in the third generation, even fourth generation. Is that right?
Third generation right now.
Third generation right now, and growing and very promising for the fourth, I think, as well. And one of the UAE's most prominent, if not the GCC's most prominent family businesses. And we are so proud to have you on this podcast, but it has to start with the personal story first, because we all know we cannot take the family out of the family business. And so that's here what we're here to talk to you about. I do wonder, you grow up, and when you were growing up, like, this legacy had already kind of evolved into something quite considerable. You were part of that really big growth spurt of the country, and your family saw and took so many entrepreneurial opportunities and risks to grow the group into this size. And you must have watched this unfold as a child as well, growing up. Can you share with us a little bit more about what that was like and what it taught you about how leadership evolves over time?
Childhood and history. I think, growing up in our household, it was quite natural to hear stories from the founder of the Easa Group, who's my father. I lived with him. So I
Yeah.
obviously saw the immense amount of work that he put into building this business. But I think what we appreciate a lot more being with him is the fact that he actually started off, he was a clerk in a post office. That was
Mm.
his first job. And he speaks proudly of that. And that also kept us grounded because
Mm.
it made us realize that these are the origins of what my father went through. And it really makes us appreciate how much work and effort went into building this conglomerate of his that he spent working till the very last day, which is, he passed away last year. But at age 98, he was working till the very last day. So it was very interesting living with a man who was part of this growth in Dubai, particularly 50, 60 years ago when Dubai was at its nascent stage. And, my father was part of all of that. So I think listening to those stories within living with him in the house and listening to those stories and appreciating where we were, where we are right now, and also the sense of giving back. That's something that really stuck with me ever since he, started working in Dubai, right up to then building his business. He was always giving back, whether it was his time, whether it was his resources
Mm.
later on. But I think this is part of our DNA that we have learned and admired from my father and the founder of the company.
And so I'm just interested in understanding, Muna, how, are the same leadership skills that he brought to bear, are they just as important now as they were then? Or are you thinking, like, of course, like, that you and your family are talking about how leadership has to evolve also in consideration of the size of the company, in consideration of these things. So what has remained of those lessons, and what are sort of like the new leadership skills that you had to evolve into as a family?
I think continuous improvement has again been very much part of what we learned. And so there was always an openness from the founder to say, all right, I don't understand this. Let's learn, let's innovate. And that was his way of, let's say, using the word per se innovation at the
Mhm.
time. the openness to always learn, openness to learn from the next generation. But really, like coming to this present state right now and where we're at, and as you said, family businesses that play such a big part in the MENA region and very big part of the economy. Three things really, and it goes back to what we know, but it's good to hear it again, which is the three P's that really make up what we need to stand for as family businesses. Profitability, but with technology in mind.
Mhm.
So I'll give you a very good example of that. During the pandemic, we invested tremendously in technology and e-commerce because we knew that everyone was at home. And our team grew from being a 5 member team, I'm talking about the digital team, 5 member team, to now being a 40 member team.
Wow.
And this investment has really resulted in a 200% increase in our business.
Mhm.
So keeping profitability in mind, however, also thinking about how you innovate from that perspective. And I think, again, people, the pandemic really taught us how important people are. So to continuously learn what are the needs of the people right now,
Mhm.
according to the circumstances, the economy that they live in.
So the frameworks you put in place are very powerful and have helped you grow as well. Tell us a little bit more about, how that felt when you built that brand equity yourself and what that experience was like for you and the family.
For decades, the GCC relied on agencies and partnerships with big companies, and we continue to do so. No doubt that that plays a vital role in our businesses. However, the innovation again comes into place in terms of asking yourself what your long-term strategy is, right? What is your long-term strategy as a business? Do we want to keep relying on partners from outside the region? Or do we want to innovate within the region? We have been working with furniture brands in retail for the last 6 decades, and we've done really well. But recently, we've started to think about our own expertise within this field of furniture. And this has been, again, fantastic journey building the brand from scratch, but now really selling furniture, accessories, and people are loving it. We're seeing the results of that.
And I think you're hitting on something so important. Fostering that kind of organic innovation in a region like ours is extremely important, but it takes the right people being put into the right place. Talking about your own journey when how you joined the family business, did it always feel like it was the right place for you? And how did your sort of like leadership journey evolve to where you are today as a vice chair?
It's been interesting, to be honest with you, Ramia. I started off just fresh out of university. I worked for a while in an ad agency outside, but then I came into the family business, and my education was in marketing and advertising. That's what I studied at university. And I came in at a time where the business was evolving from that perspective. So you're talking about 20 years ago. We were evolving and thinking about branding, thinking about, what we represent and how we represent ourselves in communication. So there was an entire department that was started. And I think that that's where I found myself, because I was quite fortunate to work under the chief marketing officer at the time, where I learned a great deal from him. But having then after that spent a good 6, 7 years in that field, I felt like I needed a refresher.
Mhm.
And that's where, the whole element of thinking about upskilling yourself, about thinking about how you can add more value to the place that you're at. And it's important to reflect on, what is important to you, I would say.
Mhm.
And for me, I think it was really enrolling in an MBA, which is what happened. I did my MBA at London Business School. It opened up a whole new world for me. I networked with different people from different fields. So it was really interesting for me to get out of that family business environment and to really, mingle with others. But again, that was great from an academic point of view. And it taught me sort of generally about different fields, let's say, whether it be finance, accounting. And I came back into the business, and that's when they said they'd like me to head the retail side of the business.
Mhm.
Dubai was going through a recession at the time, like the global world was. And so that's when I got into the retail business in quite a full force way. And straight after that, I was chosen to be part of the Aspen Fellowship Middle East Leadership Program, and that was less academia and more legacy work. talking about the Good Society. It was a group of 20 Middle Eastern fellows. We got together twice a year in different parts of the world. And I think that really contributed to the fact that I then knew what I was very passionate about, and that
Mm-hmm.
was the impact on women and girls in the Middle East. And so that program, which was called the Good Society, really shaped my thoughts from a philanthropy point of view. So I think it's really important at every stage of your life to reflect on where you're at in your career.
Mm-hmm.
How can you add value? If you feel that, there is a saturation point for yourself and even the company that you're in your family business, it's important to reassess and
Mm-hmm.
rethink of your own goals, your own values. And that's what I've done at every stage of my life, where I've now reached the point where I'm working on governance. I'm the vice chair of the company. So it has been quite a journey, but it's been a wonderful journey so far.
I think another thing that your family, of course, has done, which was quite exceptional even at the time, you were definitely one of the first to so visibly be all about female leadership empowerment. If you look at your sisters and yourself, like I think your father was one of those unique men who did not hesitate about who he wanted to put in charge. And you've been a role model for everybody in the region, I think, in that respect, when it comes to female leadership at a time, if we're being honest, where that representation was not there. Like, and I think that it's fair to say that that has changed enormously in the last few years, but still that you were in a pioneering role, which must not have been easy at the time. So if you can talk to us a little bit to that point, like how you and your sisters see this now, and you've also established the Al Gurg Women's Empowerment Forum, and I wanted to ask you about how those kinds of initiatives help you share the benefits of your lessons with your wider community. Like, so reflecting on that, what would you say have been sort of the highlights if you look back at that?
Yeah. 100% agree with you. I think we really learned a lot from the legacy that, again, my father put in place by trusting three women to take his business forward, to lead the way. So I think that that's something, again, that we learned from him. His constant guidance, sitting with us all the time, but then knowing that these are the three women who in the future will be board members and taking the business forward. So that certainly played a role in shaping our thoughts. At a time, as you said, when a man of his age did really invest in something like this and believe in it, believe in women, believe
Hmm.
in, female empowerment, although he never probably called it that, but
Of course
it
not.
is,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
exactly what it is. But I think then, again, going back to what I learned at Aspen with the Good Society, the Aspen Fellowship Program, I think something that has always been on my mind is how do we take these learnings and how do we impact the people within our company? We have 3,000 employees, of which currently 17% are women. There is a lot we can do. We are responsible business owners. So let's think about what we care about and what we
Hmm.
represent as three women on the board. So it really started with myself taking the conversation about extending maternity leave. That's how this
Hmm.
all started. And extending the maternity leave to be 3 months paid leave, whereas, we're not obliged to do so. As a country, we only have to give 45 days. But I think I took that conversation to the board and it was very well received. And we implemented that 4 years ago. And I think that that was a very big milestone for me personally, that I was able to help a lot more women stay. So we have, 17% of our employees are women. And so again, we started to reflect on what more can we do? How can we improve the number of women working within the group? How do we set aside policies to help more women and mothers come back into work? So, as I mentioned, the first was extending the maternity leave. That was so welcomed, and people have been so motivated to come back into work, whereas before we saw quite a few women leave work. So that's one thing. I think also after the maternity leave, we started to think about the programs that we can put in place for women. Reflect from an HR perspective and from a marketing perspective and communications perspective, how we can improve as a group in order for us to bridge that gender parity gap, and think about things increasing the female participation in the group. So yes, so we did a lot of things with the 30% club toolkit, which helped us a lot. And we assessed our HR, whether it's unconscious biases during
Yeah.
hiring. We trained our HRs to think differently. We then did a survey that brought us a lot of data that told us about what women do require in order for them to that translates into their career. And so we started a program called Scaling Heights, which is for mid-level female managers. Then we started another program called Accelerate Your Career, which was for junior female employees. We also enrolled some women in the Women in Business at London Business School
Mm.
program. So this helped again shape. We've had 80 women so far really come and tell me that it's changed their lives. And so again, one of our core goals is to increase the number from 17% to 30%
Mhm.
by 2025. And we're doing great. I recently got the results of the number of women that have come in this year. So yes, I think that these are the platforms that you can use from within your scope to influence the people around you and the women around you. And I think I really did accelerate that conversation to have us think that way. We were also the first family business in the UAE to sign the Gender Balance Pledge,
Mhm.
which kind of holds you accountable, which
It's
is
nice.
great. And then I continue to hold our heads of entities accountable, whether it's HR or whether it's the managers or communications. And so yeah, it's important. And I think assessing every touch point, so whether it's your website, if you go to our
Mhm.
website, there's an entire section on women at ESAG. And these are small wins and we can do them. And it makes a big difference to the way people perceive this organization.
Yeah.
But more than that, obviously, more than the communication is the actual day to day processes that you put in place, culture that you build
Yeah.
with your managers. And that is a continuous process and a continuous improvement that needs to happen all the time.
In terms when you think about the kinds of leaders we will need in future in sort of like, family enterprises, the private sector in our region, what kind of skills do you feel we need to foster in leaders in the future to make sure that they can both innovate on the governance and the cultural level on the inside of their organizations, but also make sure they have the right social, environmental, and a profitable impact, obviously.
I think leaders of the future need to listen and learn a lot more from, the next generation, and foster, as you said, this culture of innovation.
Mhm.
Be open to it. And if you feel that, it's difficult for you, well, there are so many case studies that you can learn from. So I think values are important also in terms of thinking about the values of the company, but then translating that into you as a person. What is important to you? Maybe one company is very much focused on the environment and another
Mhm.
company is focused on gender. But, bringing together those values, listening to the next generation, having this open policy way of, fostering that
Mhm.
kind of culture, and also, again, allowing for people to have the freedom to bring new ideas to you is so important. And I think really learning from each other. I'd like to see more people talk to each other about, what are their challenges? What are their needs of the future? How can I learn from Mona or Ramya or whoever it may be? And this is why I'm happy to have these conversations when you approached me, because this is the way we can all learn from each
Yes.
other. So educating ourselves by networking with each other and learning and sharing, this is the way we will always continuously grow as an economy, as a region, and as family businesses. And I think doing the opposite of that will only hinder our growth, to be honest. And I feel that we can always really honestly learn from each other.